Welcome to the Complete Beginner's Guide to Overlanding. Let's go. So in part one, we're going to be discussing how to gather intel, how to formulate a plan, choose a destination, and we're really going to lay the groundwork for the entire overland adventure. We're going to be using several tools. We're going to start with a Rand McNally Road Atlas, the National Park Guide. The second thing, we're going to use a laptop. We're going to use Google search, Gaia maps, all trails, or something very similar to that. And these tools are really going to help us set the tone for the totality of the trip. So one of the very first things that I have to take into consideration, how much time do I have off work and what's my financial availability? So I'm going to start with the PDF here. And to make it fair, I'm going to choose a random location out of my road atlas and then pretend I live there. So you can see that this can really be done from anywhere at any time, no matter what your skill level. And the more fluent you get with this, the easier it's going to be to build your adventures. So when I talk about time and finances, I'm really discussing how far I'll be able to venture away from home. So we have 1 day of time available. I usually like to stick within 50 miles of my doorstep in any direction. And then it just gets further away from there. So by the end of it, if you have 4+ days, we start considering multi-state adventures with 400+ miles of travel. I'm going to say that I have 2 days available, and we're going to say we do have the finances to do this, and we're going to put our start date for us and our family. We have 2 adults and 2 kids, and this isn't going to play too much into the role right now, but it'll come into play when we work on part 2, which covers basic gear and a basic packing list. One of the next things that we really need to consider is, what are we looking for in an adventure? Is it destination oriented? Is there an activity that we're looking for? Are they trail runs? Do we want to stay and play, or do we want to travel every single day? Because I think that really matters in the type of location that we're going to start looking for when we set our radius distance from home with our time frame. Once we narrow down the type of adventure we want to take, we can start looking in directions of travel from home that fulfill that objective. For this one, let's say we're looking more for a trail run to get our overlander feet wet. And we're also going to mix that with a destination and an activity.
A little food for thought. Some locations will offer more of a stay and play environment, where others encompass more of the journey is the destination. Just look at these previous videos, the Pony Express overland route versus the hidden lakes of Northern California. The Pony Express is a trail through the mountains in the desert, spanning several states. We had 3.5 days and chose to start the trail approximately 350 miles from our doorstep. Then we headed back toward our home state. The hidden lakes of Northern California is an out and back style trail. Within 50 miles of our doorstep, it's a specific destination that we intended to stay at for several days. When comparing them, they are nearly opposite, but both offer unique and special experiences, and both are considered what I would call overlanding.
Besides the atlas, several other suggestions to help you choose a destination are going to be social media, internet, print, magazine, TV. You see a place and you really have a desire to go see it. For us, those types of destinations seem to be on the longer end. So we'll try to plan a 4+ day adventure if we find something that's highly unique.
On a side note, which may not be so obvious, but at any point you feel overwhelmed by the adventure, it's okay to take a break. Stay in a hotel, stay at a campsite with hookups, have a great night out or a hot shower, and enjoy your comfy bed. Honestly, on a multi-week adventure, we generally spend 1 night a week off the trail, usually at a campsite with laundry and RV hookup. This allows us to catch up on laundry, maintenance issues, grocery shop, or even just be ridiculously lazy while eating ice cream in bed.
There's a lot of different things that go into the location itself. Getting overwhelmed or swamped your first few times out may make you not want to do this anymore. And for us as a family, we've just found so much value being out in nature and exploring and traveling that we want you to have a high quality experience also. So one of the last few things that I want to get into before we actually select our location, being stuck in the middle of nowhere is no fun. So if you're choosing to go several levels above your ability, it's best to bring somebody with you that can not only help you get through that, but they can also coach and train you so you can do that on your own next time. Dad moment. So we've answered how much time we have available, finances, we've figured out our distance from home, our adventure style. Now it's time to start researching those locations and interests through diving deeper into the road atlas, selecting some destinations, and even some top trails. Some of the first places that I'll look into on the map are going to be national parks, national monuments, mountains, campsites, roads, and anything of general interest in that area. So in the National Park Guide on the Atlas, we can go directly to the national park that we're looking at. The first one is going to be Sequoia National Park, and it's going to give us a really good idea of what we'll be able to find inside of the park once we're there. It also gives us an enlarged view of the park area, which is going to show us a little more detail on campsites and other park features. And then we go look at Death Valley National Park. And again, we're going to get a close-up view of the map and find unique and interesting places, campsites, and other things. So I'm going to go ahead and write these top locations down. Some of the top places from the road atlas were Sequoia National Park, Death Valley National Park, Dante's View in Death Valley, the Badwater Basin, which is the lowest point in America, and I thought that was really neat. And then we have the Lake Isabella. Some of the top destinations within the parks: Ballarat Ghost Town, Hawi Reservoir, which is not in either of the state parks, but it's on the road atlas, and I thought it was a good middle point between both parks, maybe a possible camp night one. Cook's Peak, and then we have the Lake Isabella, a great place to cool off at the end of the trip. And those are the basic destinations that I've located just within the road atlas. So we found our top locations and our top destinations. Now it's time to look deeper into the trails that we're going to be using. To do this, I like to use all trails, because I found it's very simple and it's going to find all the trails within that area, and then it gives me an option between curated trails or trails that the community members of All Trails have put onto there. So we open up All Trails, and we need to open up the More Filters option and select the OHV Off-Road Trails. As I go ahead and hover over the trails, we're going to see menus pop up, and then we'll be able to also look at the difficulty of the trail rating. And then we need to answer these questions. How difficult is it to get to the trail, and then how difficult is the trail going to be? Do I have the skill set to be able to drive the trail? And then lastly, will my vehicle handle it? And once I've answered those questions, I start committing to the things that I found and the destinations that I've chosen. And I'm basically just going to scroll through all of these trails to see if any of them connect the dots of the potential route that we're going to be taking. After we went ahead and looked at all trails, we're going to go ahead and Google search the top trails that we found, and then we're going to Google search the top destinations and nail it down an exact route that we're going to be taking. So on Google search, I just went ahead and looked for my local hometown, which was Bakersfield. Zooming in and out, I can see Lake Isabella there and Death Valley National Park. And sometimes when you zoom in and out of Google Maps, the closer you get, the more defined features you'll be able to see, and sometimes you'll find a hidden gem just by doing that. So next thing I'm going to do is pull up a basic, I live here, I want to go here, go ahead and give me a route that you think I should take. And when I did that, it was very apparent that there was an entire loop that I could take without having to go on the same trail twice. And I really like that option because it gives us something new to see the whole way through. And then I found this new feature on the map, and it was Telescope Peak. So I started looking into this, and this is an interesting one because when I started looking deeper into it, we can actually see that it's not a driving trail. It looks more like a hike trail. Well, I don't really want to hike in 110-degree weather in the desert, so let's look for a water source. So I just went ahead and Google searched water sources in Death Valley. The closest one that I found wasn't really on our route, so we had to scratch that one. And the second one that I found was the Furnace Creek. That turned out to just be a resort with like a pool that's naturally fed, so that one was quickly discarded. And then here, I'm basically just trying to connect the dots. I've already seen the overall route from Google Maps on how it tried to route me, so I'm just building the route now through all trails. As I'm building the route, I'm also looking for smaller trails that we can take, back roads or off-road trails. When we get closer to my first jump off point,
which was the Valley Wells Ballarat ghost town, I'm able to go through the mountains and the hills on a defined trail that we've already seen, taking me from Valley West all the way to the Ballarat ghost town. And as I'm doing this, I'm also writing down the general overall directions that we'll be going. I continue connecting the dots, and over here I get over to the Hawaii or Highway Reservoir. Looked like a great place for Camp Night 1. I'm just going to say Highway Reservoir. So I found a trail off Highway Reservoir, and it looked highly interesting because I thought it might be able to connect me without having to take any main roads all the way down to Lake Isabella. But that ended up not being the case. But I just want to show you how I found out that it wasn't the case. So I found the road number, and as you can see, if you zoom in, I go ahead and type it in, Highway Pass Trail, and then we come up to the Inyo National Forest. We can see from the National Forest, it actually says that it's usable, it used to be driven, but be careful because it may be washed out in places. But when we look further into the trail, through Google Images, we can actually see that it was once a trail, a 2-track trail that you could drive, but has recently been washed away. So there's no chance that I'd be able to pass this in my vehicle, nor would I want to just drive up there and see if I could attempt it. So I go ahead and remove that point from the map, and then I look for other points within the area connecting me from Highway Reservoir to Lake Isabella on back roads. And I ended up finding another one. It's just a few towns down in Linney, and this is where I found a potential camp night too. So it's the Chimney Peak Pass, but that wouldn't really give us that many miles the second day, so I just put it as a tentative place. Then I reconnected us back to the main road and Lake Isabella. So I mapped us down to Lake Isabella, and as I zoom in and out, I was able to find Cook's Peak, and I found out that it was an actual drivable trail, so I went ahead and put Lake Isabella or Cook's Peak down as a potential night too. After looking at Cook's Peak, I just connected us all the way back down to loop the entire trail, my pretend home in Bakersfield, California. Then I found something really interesting on Cook's Peak. I saw a bypass. I feel like there's a really interesting trail that we could add here, but it's going to take a little bit of investigating. And what I find is that the trail cannot be connected between the 2 points. Please try a different type of activity or switch to drawing mode. So I'm going to zoom in here, and what you're going to see is that on this map on all trails, it doesn't actually connect. We're going to go ahead and confirm that it doesn't connect by switching maps. Go ahead and open up Google Maps. On Google Maps, it does connect. So I'm going to go look at the satellite view, and on the satellite view, you can actually see the trail does connect. Once I confirm that the trail does actually go through, I just tie the trail back into the main road, and now we have a Cook's Peak bypass trail if we so want to take it. After this, I start building in some waypoints. So number 1 is like the last fuel stop, number 2 is the ghost town, number 3 is a fuel stop, number 4 is potential campsite night 1. So I'm going to go ahead and write down all the basic general directions that take us on all of the main roads, and then have keynotes in there for off-road sections.
By this point, we've really answered days available, finances, distance from home, adventure style. We've researched our locations and interests. We've looked at the directions. We've looked at camp arrangements. It's time to get into the intel of it all. And the intel is really to give us an overall picture of what we're getting into, more than it is to scare us or steer us away from going on an adventure. One of the first things that I look at for intel wise is going to be terrain and difficulty. I always like to look at the area through Gaia GPS or Google Maps using satellite imagery. I found it's often easier to see rock outcroppings and obstacles through satellite imagery. And if I'm still satisfied with the location and the trails, I'll go ahead and download the full map on my Gaia GPS and then download the entire route. And I can also download several layers of that route, so I can look at the satellite imagery later on when I have no service. I can look at the topo features, or I can even check and see where my cell service will be. Occasionally, and here's a pro tip, depending on where I'm going, I may actually bring a paper copy backup. But with the advancement in tablets and mapping in general, and the technology's come so far that paper maps are almost obsolete. The next piece of intel that I really try to gather are my distance to resources. And one of the biggest questions that I do answer is, when we're at our furthest location, what is the furthest distance to resource that I'm going to have, whether it's food or fuel or cell service? So we're going to look into the expected weather for all the days that we're going to be traveling and the locations that we're going to be traveling in. So if we can get a spot forecast for the specific location, it's really going to help us narrow down and being able to stay away from any severe abnormal weather conditions that we don't want to be a part of, or that could potentially end our trip earlier than what we'd wanted. I know it's pretty obvious, and I do keep talking about it, and it's cell service. I love being off grid and I love having no service, but I also love the ability to make a phone call and say, I got bit by a snake and now I need a medevac out of wherever I'm at. And then they just go, okay, you got it. We're sending somebody right now. Don't die in the meantime, right? And so I think that's where Gaia GPS really comes into play for us, is that I can download all of these layers to where we're going, and I can download specifically my current cell service carrier to my offline maps. And we found that it's been extremely accurate in location and service. And I guess that really paired with the WeBoost has, you know, quadrupled the ability to be able to make phone calls in an emergency situation, because it's not always convenient to use a ham radio, and it takes a lot of practice to use a ham. I use a ham radio every day at work for emergency services, and there's a lot that goes into knowing how to use it and knowing how to call for help. They're really cool and like a gee whiz, this is a cool idea, but as far as using a ham radio for an emergency device, I think there's better options out there. And for instance, I would more so recommend like a Garmin InReach. And one of the last things I like to answer on Intel are known hazards. We really want to hammer home what are some expected known hazards. Has it recently been burnt over? Are there hazard trees? Is there flash flooding possible? It's definitely trying to encompass the know before you go principle. The more we know before we can go really helps provide better contingency plans if things do go a little pear-shaped. All of this intel isn't meant to scare us away from an adventure. This is really built around helping us prepare for any potential risks or hazards so that we can mitigate those risks and hazards while maintaining the highest level of fun.
So if you're looking for hotels or campsites or wild camping, well, wild camping is extremely easy to find for us. It's more so just finding a trail and pulling over on the side of the trail. And since we already have several trails selected on our journey, I figured if we were going to wild camp, it would be very simple. Something that I always like to purchase is a 12-month interagency park pass through the National Forest Service. It's technically, I guess, through the USDA, and it covers multiple agencies like BLM, national parks, national forests, and allows you a lot of access into those places without having to pay a fee each time you go in. And then the last thing I have to write down is that we still need to download the maps through Gaia, AllTrails, and Google Maps. And anything extra like water, because there's high probability of extreme heat.
We've clearly defined who, what, when, and where, while vetting potential risks and knowing what we're getting into.
And now we're going to use this information to help us build the remaining pieces of our overland adventure. So I also wanted to offer this. If you're following along at home, you've seen Freehand Travel on the PDF. This is where we're getting into what freehand travel really is and how you successfully accomplish freehand travel. It's more of an advanced technique. When you do start attempting this, try to weave it into your pre-planned adventure before you actually just go full-blown freehand style.
So this means that we're going to be making up trip plans as we're heading towards a direction. We may not technically have a destination in mind, but we know of a direction of travel that we're going to be heading. And when we start heading that direction, usually at the first night of camp, we'll try to iron out a few details. And this seems to be where the road atlas really starts to shine, because we already know our direction that we're traveling, and then we can look along that road for interesting things like giant balls of yarn or national parks. We've also found a lot of value in just gathering local intel, watching road signs and getting to know the people around you. We found that locals are more than friendly, and they want to show you the cool places that they have in their local area. So between the road atlas, gathering local intel, Google searching, and just trying to find interesting things along that route, we found once-in-a-lifetime campsites, amazing national monuments, and just astonishing places to experience. Join me next time as we cover part 2, basic gear and the packing list, to the complete beginner's guide to overlanding. In this series, I'm not sponsored by any products or any of these people that I'm going to be mentioning of the products that we're going to be using. They're just my genuine opinions about the things that I use and the methods that I use to find amazing locations like this place and the ones that we've been to before. My true sponsor is you, the people who are watching this video. The watch time that you give us and the subscriptions that you give us really help improve our channel and enable us to create better content for you in the future. Please like, subscribe, and share this video so we can reach as many beginning overlanders as possible. I'm Austin. I'll howl at you later.
Perfect.
I gotta be at least 98% level, or I'm gonna wake up in the middle of the night and go, what am I doing with my life?
Yeah, I'm pretty easygoing. I mean, as long as it's like not super extreme either way, I'm content.
But I also just gotta learn to Elsa and just let it go, baby.
Spoken like a man with young daughters.
Yeah, my terrible dad jokes.